All right, everybody. Good evening. It is September 25th, Thursday night, week 4, Giants Chargers on deck. Jackson Dart is your new starting quarterback. Russell Wilson has been benched. Brian Daboll says it's his decision. And now the Giants head coach in year 4, already on the hot seat, entering the year coming off a 3-14 season last year. He and Joe Shane both looking over their shoulders, needing to show improvement. John Mara not feeling as patient as he would like to as they start 0-3 with losses to the Commanders, Cowboys, and the Kansas City Chiefs. And now Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers on deck. Justin Herbert and the undefeated Chargers at 3-0 are rolling. And Brian Daboll, of course, already with his back against the wall. That's part of why he's making the switch at quarterback now. He needs results. He needs to win. And I always say this about coaches: when your back is against the wall and you need a victory, you need to come out on top, or else you have to go with what you believe you do best. That could be play calling. That could be being the CEO head coach on the sidelines. That could be pulling out trick plays. In Brian Daboll's case here, it means going to his guy. It means going to Jackson Dart and putting all the money, pushing it into the middle of the table and saying that Jackson Dart is the person that I'm going to ride or die with against the Chargers, and maybe in his mind against the Saints, against the Eagles, the Broncos, the Eagles again, and on we go through the rest of the year. That is the plan for Jackson Dart to be the start of the remainder of the season. That's what they're preparing him for. But Brian Daboll might not make it that long. In fact, he might not even make it past this coming Monday after this Chargers game. There are several reasons why. It is ramped up here in recent days. It started with them falling to 0-3 to the Kansas City Chiefs. It continued with the benching of Russell Wilson and Brian Daboll sticking his neck out for the rookie and putting him in earlier than many around the league think would be wise, given the plan the Giants had articulated, the leak 10 days prior to putting Dart in as the starter and naming him QB1, the leak from the organization that their organization was not in any rush to put Dart in the game and to bench Wilson. How the tables have turned. But it wasn't just going to Jackson Dart that has now put Brian Daboll in the crosshairs. In the last couple of days, in interviews with us at the facility in East Rutherford at Quest Diagnostics Training Center, Brian Daboll has taken aim in many ways at others in the organization and has made a clear demarcation, drawn a line in the sand, that he is now a separate entity. He is banking on himself and himself alone. He is banking on himself, on the quarterback he selected. Remember, he steered the process away from Shedeur Sanders to Jackson Dart. And Brian Daboll has done this in several ways. He has made clear that this is him and no one else in several ways. He continually said this is his decision. Would have been very easy to say this was a collaborative conversation with the owner and the general manager. He made clear this was his call and his call alone. He acknowledged that others in the organization were eventually trusting him regardless of differences of opinion, but he's not giving credit to anybody else. He's saying Dart was my call. He was asked about the leak in the organization, that they weren't in any rush. He said, I've only had conversations with the players. The implication there from the head coach that he's acknowledging information got out of the building, but he's saying it did not come from me. And then we got to today. We got to Thursday, where Brian Daboll does a short, like a brief, it's called a flyby. It's an interview off the podium, not on camera, not allowed to film it on camera, but you can record it. And we get to ask Brian Daboll something like 5, 6, 7 questions, something like that. Usually really quick, and a lot of injury updates, and then a couple different questions about the team. Daboll was asked why the Giants today, when it was wet, and at the time it was just a soft drizzle, but why they were practicing outside on a rainy day with the grass slick and wet. And the reason he was asked that question is because the Giants never, almost when he's been the coach, practice outside. Daboll consistently takes them indoors during inclement weather. It's rare to see them on the field when it's slippery, when it's wet, and when the conditions are not ideal. And this is part of him being a player's coach. Joe Judge would have had the team in the rain and out there in the elements every day, believing, knowing that it's going to prepare you for those elements on game day, and no one's going to protect you when it starts raining at 1:15 on Sunday. But Brian Daboll does not take players outside on days like this. When he was asked why they were practicing outside, he said because it's easier on the players' legs. Then he said, I wish it wasn't this slippery, but we feel like this is what's best. And then another reporter started asking a follow-up question. Essentially, was cutting off the end of Daboll's answer, thinking Daboll was done, and starting to ask something else. And so Daboll says, we'd rather be out here. I wish it wasn't slippery, but we'd rather go in here than go in there inside. And then as the other reporter starts asking another question, Daboll interjects. He has something else to say. He says, and so would the medical people. Now, when he put air quotes up and said medical people in reference to those in the building who were involved in the decision to practice outside, that might not sound like something major to someone outside the organization or someone who doesn't cover this team for a living. And that's okay. But this is a shot across the bow from Daboll taking aim at the Giants medical department, which is, of course, led by head athletic trainer, executive vice president, Ronnie Barnes, who is, for all intents and purposes, an extension of ownership in this building as far as how he is treated, as far as how his voice carries, and the influence that he imparts and imposes across the building, because he's been there for a long time. He had the trust and the confidence and a close relationship with Wellington Mara, the late Wellington Mara, and John Mara and the Giants ownership, the Maras and Tisches, trust him implicitly. This is not a man you cross if you want to continue working at the Giants, but Brian Daboll did that today. Daboll also was asked about the players finding out over social media about this quarterback change instead of from somebody in the building, and whether he would have rathered something else happen so that they could have found out more directly from the leaders of the organization. And he said, that's just the world we live in. That's just the world we live in. That, again, is an acknowledgement that he would have rather it come out differently, but he's saying there's information coming out of this building. And what this is, as you put all these pieces together, this is Brian Daboll taking a stand. This is Daboll looking around, looking at the lay of the land and saying, if we were collaborative at one part of this regime, that's over. This is me doing my thing and what I think is best, regardless of what's around me. And what's around me is not something that I can trust. This is my take. Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News, here on the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard podcast. This is my take on where this stands, what Daboll is saying, and where we go from here. Go back to January when they were 3-14, sitting with John Mara, talking about what went wrong, doing the autopsy of their season. The finger pointing, the discussion, the accountability or lack thereof at points, that whole discussion and conversation, what came out of that, none of us were sitting there in the room listening to every detail. But we heard John Mara say he suggested Daboll give up play calling. We heard Daboll then say, no, that was my suggestion, disagreeing with the owner publicly. Coming out of that, the few months after that, so it was January, February, March, I reported at the time in the spring for the New York Daily News that the collaborative pairing of Shane and Daboll now were essentially working and functioning as separate entities, that the relationship had frayed, that it was now clear to both of them, but especially to Daboll, like, oh, I could be thrown off. I could be made to walk the plank here. And instead of walking in arm with Joe, who I came in with, it might be him pushing me off. And from there on, of course, they managed to get through the draft. They assembled a roster throughout the spring. Daboll, of course, did have enough of a voice in the quarterback scouting process to eventually bring it around from Shedeur Sanders to Jackson Dart, and then Shane executes the trade for Dart. And remember the video of Shane saying something to the effect of, we got your guy, to Daboll in front of John Mara in the draft room. Not lost on anybody that he said that there in front of that person. They came to training camp. They did a press conference. They pretended like everything was fine. They had it rehearsed almost. Practically cue cards up there about, relationships go through ups and downs, but we've always been in a great place and it's never been better than it is now. And this collaborative pairing is the reason why we're going to continue turning it around. It's why we were here in the first place. It's what we believe in. It's the way we operate. We know no other way, things like that. And of course, we know the word collaborative and the collaborative approach and collaboration that always gets thrown around because that was the Giants, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, and the Giants organization's favorite way to point a finger at why Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge went wrong. Not to mention that the reason they weren't a collaborative pairing was because Dave Gettleman was not qualified to do the job, not doing the things required of the job, especially down the stretch. Somebody that Joe Judge couldn't rely on. And that all led to all of the things that happened poorly at the end and why it went up in flames. But they love to continue to point at the people that they fire, that they let go, that they defend while they're in the building. But the second they're gone, it's pointing the finger at them. And that's the reason that we were bad. That's the reason we couldn't get it done, right? It was Daniel Jones last year. It was his turn. Now look at him. So they said that at the beginning of training camp. They tried to put a better face on it, and they tried to reset the public narrative on what they were as an organization, as a general manager and as a coach pairing, and on what they could accomplish. And of course, it's hard for them to, even though they try, to fight against the timeline of where this stands for how long they've been here, right? Can't be a rebuild forever. It stays where it is right now because they've misjudged their team along the way. They've made poor draft choices. They've struggled to make the right moves at the right times. They don't self-evaluate properly. So in my opinion, Sunday has two ways that it could go for Brian Daboll. One way is what he's betting on and banking on. And what we all who watch the Giants, especially people who are rooting hard for the Giants and just dying to see a win, any win, doesn't matter how it comes. One way it could happen is the team looks more disciplined. The team plays a tight game, a smart game. Jackson Dart, whether he's explosive or responsible, is an improvement at quarterback over Russell Wilson. And the Giants beat the Los Angeles Chargers coming across the country at home in a 1 o'clock start, which is really a 10 a.m. start for the Chargers on their body clocks Pacific time. If Daboll can get a result, if the team is playing hard, if the quarterback doesn't look in over his head, Daboll could maybe walk out of this game, walk into next week with the New Orleans Saints on deck on the road, a favorable matchup, even though it's on the road for most teams in the NFL. And even though the Eagles, Broncos, and Eagles await after that New Orleans game, at the very least, that performance against the Chargers would buy Daboll a second week with Jackson Dart at quarterback. And then who knows where it goes from there. Maybe that's the end there. Or maybe Mara, Tisch, and the Giants let him ride this out and finish the season just to see what Jackson Dart looks like at the end of a 14-game runway and experiment. That's one way it can go. The other way is this, and the reason I'm bringing this up, it's not to be sensationalistic. It's not to rock the boat. It's because the signs that I just described to you and laid out all point to this as a possibility. It's a possibility that on Sunday, the Giants lose in embarrassing fashion, get blown out, and that at the end of the game, if they're getting blown out, Dart struggling, if the players don't believe that they did the right thing at the quarterback position with this change, if they don't appreciate the lack of communication, if they see what we all see, which is that this quarterback change, if it doesn't save the season, it indicates that people running the team, head coach included, or primarily, believe the season is already over. And they're just trying desperately to find any piece of rope to hang on to before they plummet down. into the depths of the NFC, of the NFL, and people start losing their jobs. If that team lets go of the rope at the end of this game and it doesn't look good, Dart struggles, the Chargers have their way, they win the battle physically, and the Giants, like they have in 2 of the last 3 games, let go of the rope at the end of this game, and it's 0-4, and it's a blowout loss, and Dart clearly is not ready. With what Daboll just put out there, talking about the medical people, taking slight aim at Shane and Mara, not to mention this game on Sunday, here's the kicker, is going to start with planes circling the skies over MetLife Stadium. Daryl Slater, my colleague over at NJ Advanced Media, reports today, Thursday, September 25th, that there are at least 2 planes booked ready to fly banners over the stadium, as planes did several times last season at home games, and that there is a third that might end up flying overhead as well that is in the works of being booked or scheduled. It sounds like they're going to have the similar messages that they had last year, urging John Mara to make a change, telling the Giants and John Mara that enough is enough, looking for bigger changes than just the quarterback, seeking a better run football organization and operation. If that happens, off of the planes circling overhead, off of Daboll pointing out at the medical people, pointing at Shane and Mara, if they get embarrassed, the team lets go of the rope, and you can see a lack of belief on the field on Sunday, there is no question in my mind that it is firmly on the table that Brian Daboll could lose his job Sunday night or Monday morning. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. I'm not reporting it's definitely going to happen. I'm telling you, this is my 10th year covering the team and the NFL. I've seen enough of these situations now. I know the signs. I know the history. I know the precedent. I know the personalities involved. I have sources that I talk to. This is what I am telling you is on the table. Now, will it happen? We'll see. What do we want to happen? We want to see Jackson Dart point with the arrow up, that green arrow up that we see on sites like MyBookie when we start winning money betting on the Giants, right? That's what we want to see. But it's on the table that this game and this week could end up costing Daboll his job as soon as Monday. Now, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being patient. I see all the questions and comments rolling in. We are brought to you here on Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard here on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL, by MyBookie Sportsbook, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Salad for Men. You'll see the codes roll up on your screen here. These are the codes to get special discounts and boosts on all of our sponsor sites. It's Leonard at MyBookie. It's Talkin Ball 25 at Boom Chaga. And it's Talkin Ball at Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices is going to spice up your tailgate, home gate with big Texas barbecue flavor, all natural, no matter what you put on the grill. Brisket's my favorite. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, hooksrub.com. Join the flavor family. You're going to get a 15% discount to use that Talkin Ball code. He also has great swag. Boom Chaga, of course, you guys all know Boom Chaga right over my shoulder, along with my Hooks, Rubs, and Spices here. This is Hooks. We got the Boom here. Packets that you can throw into your coffee, tea, or water. Lowers cholesterol, boosts with antioxidants, gives you a nice little jump at the start of your day as well. That's what I like it for. Whatever you're using it for, start feeling the difference today. Boomchaga.com. The best way to support Talkin Ball is to support your sponsor, support our sponsors here, guys. So I ask for you, look for the links in my profile, support our sponsors, try them out, whether it's a product like Boom Chaga or Hooks Rub, whether you're going to get some luxury menswear and tailoring done at Salad for Men in Midland Park, or if you're tailing Pat's picks every week at mybookie.ag. The code there is Leonard. You'll get a special, basically a free bet going in there up to, I think it's something like $500. Go check that out at MyBookie. And there's a lot to offer at MyBookie. It's not just your typical, like, overs and unders and betting on the money line. They have great different ways to win prizes. The casino is awesome. It's a great place to bet WWE, UFC, just a terrific gambling site and a site that has more offerings and unique props than most of the standard sites out there. And so what you'll get if you use that code Leonard is a bet back bonus. So any bet you choose up to $500 is fully covered. And again, welcome. This is Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Guys, remember to please hit the like button when you are in here. Hitting the like while we are live, that helps engagement. And that definitely tells all those NFL and Giants fans out there where we are talking ball. And that brings them here to our community. We're approaching 5,000 subscribers to the channel. Also, speaking of subscribers, please subscribe. Hit that button, subscribe. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to the channel. And if you do that, it will allow you to ask questions on our channel in the comments. We always do a Giants trivia question, give away some hooks, rubs, and spices. We'll see if we're going to do one tonight. Definitely want to zero in on our topic of the day, which is the job security of Brian Daboll specifically, and then how that relates to this weekend, as well as want to talk about Jackson Dart. Would love to talk about Abdul Carter, Malik Nabers, whatever else is on your mind. It doesn't just have to be Giants either. I've got Seahawks Cardinals on over here on another screen, checking in on the Thursday night game. We cover the whole league here on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. That's why I was at the Super Bowl in New Orleans this year on Radio Row. I'll be back there this year in Santa Clara. Looking forward to that. As you know, Super Chats and Super Stickers is the way to get your questions or comments answered first on our channel. If you purchase a Super Chat or Super Sticker, I will answer your comment or question next. I'll put it right up next in the queue, and I will get immediately to it, especially as we wind down at the end. Sometimes I can't get through the whole queue if we have tons of questions and comments coming in, just like we have tonight. So if that's the case, make sure you purchase a Super Chat or Super Sticker and have your voice heard. Without further ado, we get to Jacob. Says, smack that like and sub button for my brother Pat on your way in. Thank you so much, Jacob. GCN says, Pat, wow, Monday they better fire Shane and send them both packing on Monday. Joey B's got the first Super Chat in the house, $10. Thank you, Joey. He says, how many more games do we lose before we fire Daboll? Is there any chance we get Gruden? Any chance we get Antonio Pierce as DC or bring Wink back? Want to have a cigar on Saturday night? That's a lot of important questions right there, Joey B. Saturday night, can't do. Sorry. This is honestly like one of the busiest weeks of my life. Literally have been doing something every minute of every day, all week. All good things. It's good busy, but Saturday night is not free, unfortunately. But have plans, and then also got to get some rest because I got to be there early on Sunday. Because Sunday, like I said, there is a distinct possibility it's going to be Brian Daboll's last game as their coach. How many games do they lose before firing Daboll? Well, Joe, I would say this. Like I said, I illustrated why he could get fired as early as Monday. Now, if they're 0-4 and he doesn't get fired and then they lose to the Saints with Dart in, at that point, losing to that Saints team and going to 0-5, knowing that 0-8 is coming with Eagles, Broncos, Eagles, he probably gets fired. At what would it be? After the Eagles game, you would think, because you've got the Thursday night Eagles game right off of the New Orleans game. So it would probably be 0-4 Chargers, 0-5 Saints, 0-6 Eagles, and then maybe off that long week, right, with the Thursday and kind of the mini bye. That would probably be the point if he didn't get fired this early. It would be hard, even though, honestly, on the one hand, it would be awkward to fire a coach in between New Orleans and Philly because you really don't have that much time to prepare for the Philly game. But on the other hand, if you lost to the Saints game, I mean, how could the Giants team come back up and play the Eagles and have any fight at all in them? That would be interesting to see. This is why I do think the arrow points to this game more so than people realize. I think it very much points to this Chargers game more than people recognize. Gruden, I think he's a factor. It's because he's sued the league and has, is in court with the NFL. It of course would make sense because he has been lobbying for college jobs. It would make sense for him to end up in college, Florida being one of the jobs that you always hear coming up. By the way, did a great episode of Talkin Ball with Rafael Esparza, the global odds maker for my bookie. That's on our channel right now on YouTube, on Talkin Ball YouTube page. PL on NFL is the handle. And we talked, Raphael and I did, about John Gruden odds, how he's setting those odds. Also, my bookie, by the way, like you can suggest, a prop for the site, and they will, if they like it, they'll accept it and put it on there. Like after Raphael came on my show, they actually created a unique Jackson Dart prop. You can see it on my Instagram page. It's basically like, will he first throw a touchdown pass or an interception now that he's the starter for the Giants? So I'm going with TD, but you can click the link on my Instagram there, use that deposit code Leonard, and get that buyback and bet on your guy Jackson Dart. That'd be a good way to maybe put some good vibes into the air for the Giants and for Jackson come Sunday. Can we say Daboll didn't want Russ from the start, says Vinny? Vinny, I think to an extent, yes. So obviously Daboll enabled the plan to stick with Russ, to call him the starter early right away, to hand him the job, to run him out there as the first team quarterback the whole time. So it's not like he can throw up his hands and say, I had nothing to do with it, because obviously he had everything to do with how they operated until they pulled him. But yes, I believe that Russell Wilson is more the Shane pick, and Daboll, especially once they drafted Dart, has been angling for a way for this to happen. And this is why the way we got this confirmed was after the Washington loss in week 1, when he wouldn't commit to Wilson initially as the starter for week 2 after that game. And he didn't, brush aside the question and say, why are you asking me that now? Like, of course he's our starter. Once he didn't do that, it was very clear that he entered the season, okay, I'm going to prepare this guy. I'm going to try to prepare him to be the starter. We're going to go along with this plan. But the second there's a hiccup and our offense looks bad, I'm going to the kid. And that's where you saw that tug of war, where then somebody else in the organization leaked that they were in no rush to put Jackson in right before the Cowboys game. And then Daboll put Jackson Dart in the game anyway against the Cowboys, even though Russ was having a great game. And then Dart plays again the next week, and now he's the starter. So yes, I think we can say that, Vinny. Jake Asman, what's up, man? Jake, great to see you. Says, big fan of the show, Pat. Also great spot with Rothenberg this week. Keep crushing it. Thank you so much, Jake. Love your work as well. Professional. And, you guys obviously know who Jake is. Does great work. And I appreciate you being in here, Jake. Welcome to Talkin Ball. We do Talkin Ball live, by the way. All of you, if you're new here, obviously the diehards know, but if you're new to our channel, we have special guests every week. We go live Mondays and Thursdays, generally 9 o'clock. The latest we do it would be like halftime of the Monday night or Thursday night games. And then the bread and butter of our channel right now is Talkin Ball post-game live, where I go inside the Giants locker room after the game, talk to Brian Daboll, talk to the players, get injury updates, news, analysis, text with sources, call sources, write for the daily news. And then I jump on YouTube live from the stadium, whether it's MetLife Stadium, whether it's down in New Orleans next week, whatever it is, wherever the road game is or the home game is, I'm there at the stadium telling you what I saw live, what I heard, and really just doing something that not many people in the country covering the NFL are doing, which is going direct to you, the fans, with the information first, which is what we do here on Talkin Ball Live, as well as giving you guys voices post-game to either vent, praise, point things out about the team that maybe some of us didn't notice ourselves. I learned just as much from what the fans are seeing and saying as what I impart to you guys, I believe, in a lot of these. So this is what we do here on Talkin Ball Live. And as you guys know, I'm not always right. In fact, we get a lot wrong. We all get a lot wrong, right? But if you noticed, if you saw, I predicted back in May that the Giants were going to start 0-3, and they were going to start Jackson Dart for the first time in week 4 against the Los Angeles Chargers. And why did I predict that? I predicted it because I didn't think the team would be good. I knew that they loved Dart. I knew Daboll loved Dart, and I knew he would be coaching for his job. And all of those things add up to, in addition to this, when teams draft quarterbacks in the first round, they play early. They always play early, and they always play earlier than most people believe they're going to. And so that's where we find ourselves now. If you look back, in fact, in 2019, I accurately predicted the exact week that Daniel Jones was going to be inserted as QB1 and that Eli Manning was going to be benched. So that's two of the two most important quarterback shifts and changes for the organization since I've been covering the team. And I predicted in the offseason, prior to this regular season starting, the exact week that those players would end up entering the lineup. And listen, I'm not a self-promoter. I've never been one. But this business forces you to be one because if you don't, people will just climb all over you. Ken, what's going on? Says this coaching regime needs to go with the possible exception of Brasillo. Oh, that's interesting. Tiger says, I'm so sick of Daboll. Baldy boy couldn't coach his own Pee-wee league. Baldy boy. Shane needs to be thrown out. Pat, I loved how you put it. Touching the third rail, so to speak. I hope if we lose this week, he is gone Monday morning. Pat, saw your YouTube short, GCN says. So if Daboll is going solo, then he has not been running the team and the owner or Shane forced Wilson on him and forced him to start. Tony Dungy said if the coach does not have all the power and the organization in making decisions, then the coach will not last the season. No Mets, what's going on? Good to see you. John says firing Daboll after 4 games will make this job toxic. No top candidate would consider coming here if that happens, and I'm not sure any interim from this staff does better than Brian Daboll this year. I think it would probably just then become Mike Kafka's job if that happened. Kafka was acting very head coachish at his podium interview today. You should go watch it. Did like an opening statement on Dart and the offense. Definitely seemed to understand the moment. I don't think so, John, just because, listen, this job couldn't be any less desirable right now. I mean, it's a little bit more desirable than it's been at certain times because you could make the argument that like Malik and Abdul and guys like that have talent and people would like to coach them and that kind of thing. But listen, there's not a lot of leadership here. There's not a lot of wins here. And the organizational structure, whether Daboll gets fired now or at the end of the year, like people already know not to trust the construct that's in place here. I mean, you see how divisive things get and how the building divides every staff, right? It's divided again now with 2 people who are supposed to be so collaborative and, you know, the ultimate teammates. You know, John, I think obviously not ideal, but I would say if you fire Daboll after 4 games, it's not just after 4 games. It's after 3.5 years. And if you want to attach it to last season and say that John Mara, you know, he knew that these guys didn't really deserve, based on the results, to be back. He essentially said that. He just said there are things about their process behind the scenes that he trusts and likes and is impressed by. And he's trying to be more patient than he's been with other staffs. And he believes and he's going to put trust in them to eventually get those results. But John Mara knew that the results dictated that they shouldn't be coaching and running the team anymore at that point. And so if he operated this whole offseason knowing I could have easily fired this guy, I'm really giving him borrowed time, and then he starts 0-4, you're firing somebody who is 3-18 at that point in their last 21 games over 2 years. I mean, really the person who looks the worst is the owner at that point, but I don't know. I mean, just like Daboll is going to the quarterback, you got to try something. And like I said, there's a lot of variables other than just the wins and losses here now too. Tiger says they can't be any worse. Joe says, Pat, Jim Harbaugh wanted the Giants job when it was open, but the Giants didn't want to hire a winner. John says, actually, the Giants can get worse. Eli had a bad first year after replacing Warner, who might have made the playoffs. No Med says, I wish that Joe Shane hadn't traded Leo. Yeah, it's an interesting comment. I was actually talking to somebody about Leonard Williams the other day. I definitely think that was the moment that Dexter Lawrence scratched his head a little bit. You know, that as much as Leonard Williams wasn't always living up to the first round billing, and it wasn't like their run defense was perfect when he was here either. He's a high level player, and he and Lawrence were close. They were friends, and their interior, they haven't replaced him as an interior defensive lineman. Their interior D line has never. Now, listen, Shane did get a second round pick in that trade. So at the time, given where the season was and the value he was getting back, we can rip him for certain moves he's made. That was getting good value for a player at a certain time on his contract. That said, though, again, this general manager has struggled consistently to read the room, to understand the dynamic of the team, the relationships, the leadership, the chemistry, the cohesiveness of the team, who belongs, who doesn't, who the leaders are, who they can live with and live without, all bad judgments that he has struggled with. And you can see the results playing out with guys on other teams now. So Intel, it's really just, I think the writing is on the wall for Daboll that he's on his own. That's I think the best way to put it. Sublight says, I thought that was weird the way he said he made the decision with Dart. You could see there was something behind that. Absolutely. Joe says, Pat, Bruce Arians, Tampa Bay Super Bowl winning coach, again, said he would have never signed Wilson, that you do not learn watching. You have to play. He also said he knows Daboll and he is a good coach. Peterstown says, Pat, do you think Mara will ever hire a coach with a good track record, but would want full control with no ownership interference? I mean, they've tried their hardest to be hands-off with this staff. And you see how that's turned out. I think they've tried to be hands-off with this staff, and the general manager is cozy, to the ownership, while the coach is kind of out on his own island, is the way I see it. And, it depends on how strong of a personality. I mean, you're talking about a Saban, you're talking about a Jim Harbaugh type, right? Nick Saban's a guy who, was on the Giants' radar in the past a long time ago. He's up there in age now. Is that something they would really go to? Is that something Saban would go for, to trust that he would have that total say so and full control? Because that person on the other side has to trust it. GCN thinks the leak was from Wilson's people about not being in a rush. That would be pretty disingenuous to report that, though. I don't think Adam Schefter would report that the Giants as an organization weren't in a rush to play him without someone from the Giants telling him, or at least confirming that. There's no way that he would go with that and describe it that way just because Russell Wilson's people told him that. DGH checks in with 20 bones. Thank you so much, DGH. He says, how does Mara feel about Daniel Jones on the Colts? Well, I mean, it's impossible not to look at that and feel worse about the job Daboll has done here, right? Now, John Mara hasn't talked to us since the end of last season. So, how does he feel about it? He's not talking to us about it. He was walking off the field shoulder to shoulder with Joe Shane slowly on Wednesday after practice as we were coming out there, but did not address the media, has not addressed the media, broke precedent when he didn't address us at all at the owners' meetings in March. If you think about it, John Mara still has not weighed in an interview about Jackson Dart and about the pick. So, but I could tell you, DGH, that my understanding is that, the Giants as an organization, when they see Daniel Jones, when they see Joe Shane and Brian Daboll give up on Daniel and Daniel look this way for another team, first of all, that these guys are to blame for everything that goes wrong, and they also share the credit when things go right. But there's different things each one is involved more in. Like Daboll is the one who is creating the offensive scheme and running the plays on the field, right? Joe Shane's building the roster, helping to dictate game day, who's dressing game day, things like that. But the performance of the player, the scheme, what you're running on offense to combat what defenses present to you, and how you adjust, what your opening script is, what your halftime adjustments are. That's coaching. And it's impossible for them to look at what Daniel Jones is doing and not feel worse about Daboll as a coach. So that is also a major factor. And thanks for bringing that up, because that is a major factor in why it could happen so quickly. Let's see. Great chat going on tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here. GCN says, why do they not have real grass in the bubble? Giants too cheap? No, that it's like a composite. It's like it's not real grass. It's like a turf that is as close to mimicking grass as it gets, I believe. And they had changed the turf a couple times to get to that. E-Man says Daboll is finished. John says Dan Mara won't tolerate shots against Barnes at all. That might push Daboll over the edge. Intel says I can't blame Daboll for that. Let's see. Joe says Pat Mara thinks he knows football, picking the quarterback and having a family member as a fake scout. MJ says Daboll is down to his last shot. This is his quarterback, so we'll see. NYOG, who can replace Daboll if he gets fired? The OC? I would think it would be Mike Kafka. That would be, I think, who would be the replacement. And that's my opinion. And really, that's goes along also with how the league has gone, right? The young up-and-coming offensive coordinator. Now, Kafka obviously has been party to some brutal offenses here. So not the same thing exactly like a Sean McVay, right? We're not saying that. But just, he's on a head coach. He's been on a head coaching track, or he's trying to be on one. And even though the Giant situation isn't helping, he's got the Andy Reid tree. He played in the league. He's got a lot of connections. And I think that the Giants haven't done right by him in a lot of ways, especially early on. And so that would be a way to do right by him on the way out. Let's see. And obviously in that, you're always giving a coach in those interim situations a chance to kind of win the job themselves and stay. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's always a possibility too. And I'm not endorsing that should happen. I'm just saying that's what I think would happen if Daboll got fired. Right. Better to go on your shield than someone else's. GCN says, Pat, you were great at your job. The fans want the truth, but a lot of fans can't handle the truth, from Pat Leonard. Thanks, GCN. Mav says this seems like a lot of speculation. I would call it, Mav, first of all, thanks for being here. And, you guys probably noticed I muted a commenter named William, who was kind of being nasty. Like, I like disagreement for sure, Mav. So I appreciate you being here, and I don't mind that at all. I mean, that's what this is for. But all I ask is people don't make things personal. And that doesn't just go for you talking to me. That goes for talking to other people in the chat as well. We want this to be like a civil, constructive, and entertaining and informative conversation. Well, Mav, I would say the speculation on my part would be coming to the conclusion that Monday could be it from the facts that I'm putting together. But none of the information I presented to you is speculation, as far as what he said today, what it means, why it's serious and not just a throwaway line. Like I can just promise you, like that's the difference between having somebody who's experienced cover these teams and someone who's not. Like there are people who were interviewing Brian Daboll today, probably, who did not hear him say that, or didn't notice that he said it and didn't recognize the gravity of the situation. But I've been doing this long enough, and I've seen enough situations, and I've been plugged into them to know behind the scenes what happens before what really happens. Like, why do you think I can predict some of these big moves and when they're coming? And now I'm not saying that I'm going to be accurate and dead on and Daboll's going to get fired Monday, but I'm saying reading the tea leaves doesn't just mean speculating. It means using information to reach a logical conclusion, if that makes sense. But like I said, that's just a possibility that I'm bringing to everybody today, because it is on the table now. Speculation is common sense here, says Jay. 1 of 15 last 16 games for Bozo. The shame. GCN says, Pat Daboll saw your live stream. He said, we lost Pat and the fans. He must bench Wilson. Dr. Garrett says, what's good, Pat? This is starting to smell really bad. Love the show. Thanks, Dr. Garrett. Great to see you. It's all just a big Spider-Man meme, just pointing fingers. Coward, says Jay Farries. Mav says this is why Daboll won't say anything to the press. He has said plenty this week, Mav. Plenty. Yes, I do, Dean. Jay says it's Bobby Johnson's fault. It's Wink's fault. It's DJ's fault. It's Bowen's fault. Right. MJ says, who is the best coach out of McAdoo, Shermer, Judge, or Daboll? Judge, the best CEO coach. McAdoo, the best. Well, Judge, the best CEO coach. Shermer and McAdoo were both good offensive coaches. Shermer got his quarterback hit too much, but they both knew how to run an offense. I personally think Judge out of all four of those. Joe at the end, of course, became somebody who was just trying to do it all himself, and was drowning because of a lack of ability to lean on people like his general manager for sure, and also he was promised 3 years and only got 2. So that's a big thing as well. Joe Judge was promised 3 years and only got 2, whereas Brian Daboll is here in year 4. But I think it's Judge. Now, what did Joe Judge need? He needed a general manager that he was aligned with, and he needed a better offensive coordinator. And if they had given him one more year and he had coached that 2022 season, I think there is a great chance he would still be the coach here today. Jay says, I don't think fans even care anymore. It'll be interesting to see because the Chiefs had a lot of fans there in the stadium. The Chiefs had a lot of fans in the stadium at MetLife on Sunday night. The Chargers aren't exactly a team that you expect to have a gigantic fan base there for, a cross-country game, let alone to fill their own stadium and prevent road fans to enter and invade. So it'll be interesting to see what the crowd looks like. How loud is it for the Chargers, right? Is it full? Are Giants fans selling their tickets already? Are they going to come to support Dart and to just for entertainment's sake and because they're intrigued and interested, but are they going to boo quickly if it doesn't go well? The dynamic will be really interesting. The planes certainly won't help the Giants. We got another super chat here in the queue, and it is Formula Red. Thank you, Formula. He says, do you think Shane goes with Daboll? He has done a good job putting talent on the team. Will they retain Shane and find a new coach? There's a chance they do. I do not agree with the comment that he's put good talent on the team. I think one thing he's benefited from is that they're always losing, so they have higher draft picks. So eventually you do get some hits on some of those. I think that his drafting has been subpar. I think the offensive line still isn't fixed because of poor acquisition and evaluation. I believe that they have ignored certain positions to their detriment. And I think that, listen, he's more of a baseball GM who has his hand in everything. And Shane is just as much of a party to all of the shortcomings of this team as the head coach is. And so I do not believe that the coach should be fired and the GM should survive if that is what they're going to do, if they're going to blame somebody. But he's cozier with ownership. And, I know the feeling I've had even since the end of last season, and this again goes back to Brian Daboll and Shane kind of working as separate entities in the spring. The writing has been on the wall that the first one to get blamed here of those two, and Daboll sees this too, is probably going to be the coach. I hope that answers your question. Thank you for the super chat. All right, let's see. Let's get back into the queue. Joe says, Pat, give him hell. The Giants YouTube is totally scripted by Shane. Wilson signed Everyone said he throws a great deep ball. Problem is that's all he can do. John says, no matter how bad it gets this year, Shane is safe. He's tight with the nephew, and that matters in the Giants organization. Jay Farry says, Joe, Interstate, big upgrade at QB, 4th team in 5 years, and his teammates never liked him. This fan base bought his BS. I will say this. Another thing I got right, and again, plenty of things we always get wrong, right? But I never for once bought the Russell Wilson is going to be an upgrade, is going to save the Giants, is the right move. Never bought it for a second, never sold it to any of you for a second. And I think it turned out that that was the right call. No Mets likes the Giants to beat the Chargers. I will say this. I've said this before. These games with these teams coming from the West Coast, they're a little funky, right? It's an early start for them. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time for the Chargers. Maybe they start slow, sluggishly. Herbert makes a mistake early. The Giants crowd actually gets into it because Dart makes a couple plays with his legs, right? And then whether they win or lose, that makes the day and the game intriguing and exciting and fun. And maybe there's a little bit more promise to where this is going coming out of that game than going into it. This is a strong Chargers team, though. And they're a team that is multiple on offense, that is not one-dimensional, that can throw the ball down the field, that has a sharp route runner in Ladd McConkey underneath, and who can also go down the field as well. Their defense is stout and sturdy. Jesse Minter is a strong defensive coordinator. Harbaugh, look at his win percentage as a head coach. I mean, imagine Brian Daboll beating Jim Harbaugh, looking at their records as head coaches. And listen, they've played 3 division games, and they've beaten the Chiefs, the Raiders, and the Broncos. 3 games, 3 wins. They beat the Chiefs by 6, the Raiders by 11, and the Broncos by 3. So you look at that Raiders game, they won at Raiders 20-9. You consider the Giants probably a similar type opponent to the Las Vegas Raiders. So you see if the Giants defense can get some takeaways and Jackson Dart can take more advantage on offense than Russell Wilson did. And remind me if I don't mention it as I get to our next super chat. Definitely want to talk about Malik Nabers, how to get the ball more to him, because I did a story for the Daily News on that and rewatched a lot of the film. NFL Giants, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, if I had the power to change 2 things, that would be this color and logo. I'm tired of seeing other teams change their jersey color and logo, and we still stuck with this 1900s look. Interesting. I do like when artists, post on social media, like different ways that they would just spice up teams' logos, like just throwing ideas out there and kind of like tagging the teams and saying, there's one guy who did one of the Jets, and he put like the New York skyline behind the word Jets and tried to create a new logo, like just an example of what you could do. And it was just really sharp. Like it was a reminder, to your point, NFL, that you can be innovative while still kind of sticking with the tradition. Now, I do think the Giants have some nice, clean looks with the traditional old school. But, you can tinker with it, work it out. I mean, I'm a Notre Dame grad, and so, I'm not a fan of like the sports Notre Dame leprechaun, if you've seen that. Like, I think it's hokey, but it obviously also partially stays true to the old one. So all I know is these Cardinals uniforms are kind of interesting tonight. But that's an interesting comment by you, NFL. I say this every year, and I think we talked about this in the chat one time. I want to see them break out the Reds again. I know they've had some bad fortune in those Reds, and it's not something that they're eager to throw back on. But I think the more red in the Giants uniforms, the better. Like they had the end zone. They painted the end zones red for one of their legacy games 2 years ago. It was like a red end zone with Giants in blue. And it was like one of the nicest things I've ever seen. I told everyone in the organization that day, I was like, you should do this every week. This should be the end zone every week. Let's see. All right, let me get back into the queue. NFL Giants, thanks for that. Need a sip of this tea with some honey here. My voice this is the first week of the season and in a while that I'm like starting to lose my voice. I've been talking so much. We got another super chat rolling in. Oh, here we go. 2 more. Cruzan 26 drops a $2 super chat. Thank you. He says, why are we so bad at stopping the run? So the interior defensive line, it starts there. Somebody mentioned Leonard Williams earlier, missing him. And definitely they've rotated, bodies in and out there. Ashawn Robinson was on this team once upon a time. They signed Nacho a couple years ago, and they've tried to add pieces, whether it's drafting DJ Davidson, drafting Darius Alexander, undrafted rookie Elijah Chapman, drafting Jordan Riley, etc. And it just hasn't taken. They haven't been able to identify that additional person or two who can just properly plug the hole up front, plug those gaps, keep bodies off the linebackers. And that's where it starts. Darius Alexander this year, for example, just as an example, was the Giants' solution to stopping the run this year, to pair him with Dexter Lawrence, to acclimate him, to bring him up to speed, and to have him eventually be a guy who would help be a game wrecker in the middle. And he starts the season as a healthy scratch. The D-line coach said he's not going to put him on until he's ready, doesn't want to ruin him. Then the organization puts him on the field anyway. And then he looks overmatched because he's not ready, because he's not good enough, because he wasn't good enough in camp. So that is where you should zero in. I think their edge rushers, they have good players and guys who are mostly known for their pass rushing, like Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, all guys more known for rushing the passer than for stopping the run, even though they do help with that and they can do that. Thibodeau, his run defense slipped after his rookie year, but I still think of the three of those guys, if you had to ask one of them to set an edge on a play, it would probably be Kayvon. But generally their edges are more pass rushers than run stoppers. Then their interior behind Lawrence is not deep and talented enough. And then, you've seen, like, once these guys get to the second level, sometimes there's been bad angles, missed tackles. Tyler Nubin had a tough one in Dallas. Obviously, last year, Deonte Banks had some tough ones on the edge. But it starts up front. It starts up front with the personnel, with the coaching of the D-line, with the discipline, with the playmaking up there. Josol checks in with a $5 super chat. Thank you. He says, Pat, as an outsider, I appreciate your straightforwardness and giving the uncomfortable truth. Now we've just got to get Winston out of that hostage situation. Seriously. Save Jameis. I'm in on the Save Jameis movement. Let's go. All right, let's see. Mav says, so Daboll's job is decided after the rookie quarterback's first game. That's a ridiculous take, Pat. Well, Mav, it's not just based on Dart, obviously. You heard the factors I kind of laid out there. But there's just a lot of politics and infighting going on right now with this situation. It's not as simple as just what's on the field. That's what I'm conveying to you guys. Obviously, the solution can be just the team playing better on the field and winning games, and it quiets all the noise and people can focus on, wow, wait, did they actually draft a great quarterback, right? And so that's what Daboll's banking on. But outside of that, I'm saying all the other things that are happening would lead to him getting fired if it doesn't change. Farry says something crazy would have to happen by week 8 for Shane Ball, Bozo to get fired. Should have all been gone last year. MJ agrees with Mav. I don't think they're going to fire him after one game of Dart. Mav says, who expects a saved season? What the hell? Well, no, not saved season in terms of not saved season in terms of like the season turning around, just in terms of Daboll like coaching it out and finishing it out. Tiger says they might pull him from the sidelines and all of his staff too. I could see that, but I hope not. GCN says Kurt Warner said he hoped the decision was a coaching decision and not to save their jobs. He said they told him the team was not good. Eli was the future. Eli went 1-6 that year. Right. So you're referring to when they put Eli in back in the early 2000s, that Kurt Warner said he hoped the decision was up to the coaches and not just to save people's jobs, and that they told him the team wasn't good and the team struggled with Eli. Let's see. Right. And Warner had to replace Eli. He was bad against the Ravens. E-Man Perry flashing the planes. Maybe we're going to see E-Man flying over the stadium on Sunday. Francis says, if Daboll gets fired on Monday, does the front office have someone lined up to replace him? I think it would be Kafka in that situation. MJ thinks they're going to let Daboll finish the season and evaluate after that. Sublight says Daboll could get a job as an air traffic controller at MetLife. Jay says at least Pat tells the truth. He doesn't follow the Giants' media narratives. Tiger, this is a good point. He says, I hope the planes come because you're tired of the organization, but you don't want to see that for Dart. Yeah, and that's what's awkward about this is that by bringing this regime back and by sticking by people who don't know how to win and haven't managed the team well, they've now drafted Dart into this. So they've done this. They've created this. This situation exists because they stuck with this regime. And now Dart's job will be impacted by being coached by Brian Daboll, being on a team run by Joe Schoen. Let's see here. Joe says, that is right, Pat. One is a GoFundMe plane to fire Shane Daboll and all the terrible scouts. Barb says, if you're flying a banner at Dart's first start, you're not a fan. Interesting. MJ, I will never bet on the Giants. That's funny. No Met says, do the Giants need a better medical staff? I do think turnover in that department, as well as any department that never turns over in the building, would be a good thing. There are some areas of the Giants organization and other organizations too. I mean, they're not the only one that functions like this, but you can't have accountability exist in certain parts of the building and then no accountability exist in others. You also want to know, like somebody brought up earlier, could you hire a coach who would say, hey, I have total control and knowing ownership's not going to meddle and no one else is going to get involved? Anyone who's coached for the Giants, who's been in the Giants building, knows that there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of voices behind the scenes, a lot of people talking behind your back, siding with somebody else, and a lot of people who have more influence, even though they're not the head coach or the general manager, than you would expect or believe or ideally want. And so those are factors when you're considering about taking a job like this, and people on the outside, when they have conversations about what the Giants look like, that's relevant. Let's see. Barb says, I can't see Daboll getting fired soon. Mara has to give him time with Dart. Thank you, Dr. Garrett. Yep. Let's see. MJ posits that William, the fan who was spamming us earlier, was actually Brian Daboll. Honestly, I don't think Brian Daboll would be upset if he was watching this right now. I don't think I'm calling out anything that he doesn't see himself. I think that he understands, and that's why he's acting the way he is. He sees that his back is against the wall and that it's kind of like he doesn't have allies, right? He doesn't have the allies he used to have that he wanted to have. Looks like on Thursday Night Football, Andrew Whitworth and Ryan Fitzpatrick teed off a little bit on the Giants organization. Let's see if I can check out what they said here. Ryan Fitzpatrick says this is kind of a failure on all levels here with the New York Giants. Whitworth says, to me, this is much bigger than whether Dart can play well. They have to fix things in the organization of how they make roster decisions. Whoa. There's someone who knows what he's talking about. Fasho says, I was wondering the same thing. If we're still bad in the red zone and third downs after this, then what's the excuse or answer? Right. Well, that's why this is a risk. It's exciting, but it's a risk. Joe says this would be big news if Daboll was out by Monday. Call Daboll after he is out. Get him as a source of how bad an owner Mara is for your book. Let's see. Jay, what's going on? By the way, thank you all for having my back when people are trolling here. I appreciate you. Every quarterback that has played here under Daboll has been awful. Common denominator is him. If he's truly this dysfunctional, then he should be fired regardless of whether the team wins or not, says Richard. I'm telling you, it's on the table. I'm not going to troll, but I have felt Steven feels like I like to push drama early because negativity can sell. Steven, I promise you, I do not say something because I think it sells. I don't. Now, will I talk about on a certain, like if let's say I'm doing around the league, you know, everyone maybe will hit on a more popular topic that everyone's talking about to generate more conversation. But I just try to identify the things that I think either I know most about or I'm most passionate about, or really what I always want to try to bring to you guys is like the biggest story. So let me give you an example, Stephen. Today, I woke up and my job for the Daily News, we had talked about it, planned it out. This wasn't on my radar at all. This Brian Daboll, like pushing himself to the brink for this week. This morning, I spent, I don't know, an hour and a half watching Giants offensive film from the Chiefs game and dissected what Nabers did, what he ran, whether the Chiefs were playing zone or man, why he wasn't getting open. When he was open, why didn't Russell Wilson get him the ball? How did Kafka adjust in the game plan? And my one story for the day was supposed to be, here's what went wrong with Malik Nabers against the Chiefs, and here's maybe how they can unlock him differently against the Chargers. And so like that was going to be my story. That's not like a click, that's not like click on this, that's like, hey, the Giants are trying to win. They need to get the ball to their best player more. Let's dive a little deeper into the details of this and try to find out information that I can share with you that's different, that's unique. And when Daboll followed up yesterday's press conference with today's and those comments and the air quotes over the medical people, it really called into focus for me that this is now consistent behavior of a head coach who recognizes he's on the outs and that he's running out of allies or has run out of allies. And so what I did is then I wrote another story for the Daily News, a second one on this, because it's the biggest story of the day. I'm not going to let you open the New York Daily News tomorrow. And yeah, you'd read an interesting story about Malik Nabers, but it wouldn't be the main story of the team. It wouldn't tell you the primary story of the organization for the day. So that's how I think and how I do my job. Like I hope that makes sense. And sometimes I get tired of defending this point for this reason. This team has lost 17 of its last 20 games. For anybody to suggest that I'm too negative about a team that's lost 17 of its last 20 games, I don't even know what to say. I mean, that's hard to do, like that's really hard to do. Like, could you imagine missing 17 of 20 foul shots? Like, I'm just trying to think of it. I mean, it's not directly analogous, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard for me to feel like I'm being that can ever be too negative about a team that never wins, like never wins. Yes, first year DJ was solid, even though he got hit a lot. No Met says can't judge Daboll for Russ. Clearly, that was a Shane signing decision. Let's see. Dr. Garrett says, don't know what's worse, the losing or Daboll's pressers. It's so past old. Has to be worse for you, Pat, to have to listen to him say nothing every week in person. Yeah, and what's worse too. And, I mean, Steven, I understand, like you want to hear better, more positive things about your team. And like I said, there's stuff about Nabers, like good, bad, here's constructive, how he can get open better, all those things. But, you listen to these pressures and it's not even about necessarily like, oh, this is so boring to listen to or whatever. It's more like these moments where he either doesn't have an answer, doesn't want to give one, is combative for no reason, or sounds like he doesn't have an answer. It's just all reinforcement of what I believed coming out of last season, which is like, it's time. Like, it's time to move on. You need a new coach. You need new leadership. You need new blood. This isn't good enough. The standard of this organization has to be higher. That's where my mind goes in those press conference moments that you're talking about. Let's see. MJ thinks that Daboll just wanted Winston and Dart, and that he didn't want DJ or Russ. MJ, you might be on to something there, at least partial truth there. For show KB says, nice job on the fan. Thank you so much. Yes, BT and Sal, always great going on with those guys. They're awesome. Let's see. GCN says we can judge Wilson now. 4 Super Bowl winning coaches said he is terrible. Jay Farry says Daboll's pressers should get him fired. So pathetic. Hanging by a very loose thread. Any chance they move Wilson to make cap space to re-sign Illuminor early? I think there's a chance Wilson's not on the team by the trade deadline, or that he requests a release after that, something like that. Re-sign Illuminor. I mean, my mind's not there yet. I mean, they're not going to save that much cap space by cutting or trading Russ. I think it's a few $1 million. So I don't know if that would be the one thing that would allow them to do that. But yeah, that is a player that they're going to have to make a decision on sooner or later. Let's see. Luann says, Pat, Daboll has another year on his contract. I want him to be extended. Extended. He has Dart now, so let's leave Daboll alone. Mara doesn't want to keep changing coaches. Luann, I always love your positivity. Really, I appreciate it. Let's see. Losing Wink kind of bombed Daboll's coaching tenure, to be honest. Agree. Biondo, what's up? Great to see you. Thanks always for supporting the channel. He says, hey, Pat, I know they bowl. I know Daboll has been a handful for all you reporters to handle these last few years, and I have never cared for myself, but you have to respect him willing to go out on his shields. I think that's the way I would do it. I would go out doing what I felt like I did best, and I would go out not doing something somebody else's way. And that is certainly what he's doing. Like, he said something along the lines of, like, he kept saying, it's my decision. It's my decision. And eventually Daboll said something along the lines of, this is happening because what did he say? When you're trying to fix a problem or address a situation, like, you do whatever you think is right. That's why this is happening, because this is what I think is the best move and the right move for us. And that was him saying, like, it's me. It's my call. It's no one else's. And yeah, that's the right way to go, I think. Much respect to Big Boss Pat, diehard Giants fans across the pond. Greetings from our entire rugby club heading back to Italy. Please pray for my upcoming victims. Tuto Azuri checking in, always a big time supporter of Talkin Ball. Tuto, thanks so much for being here as always. Let's see. D-Pat says, I'm hoping... D-Pat, what's up? Says, I'm hoping John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin get fired so we can hire one of them. Interesting. Yes. Two names to watch. No Mets with a crazy comment here. No Mets. Wink wasn't that good with the Giants. Oh, my goodness. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, they tied for the league lead in turnovers, forced takeaways the one season. They basically, their plan helped them to that start that they had, this 6-1, 7-2 in 2022 to help make the playoffs. I disagree. And their personnel, it's not good enough yet now, but their personnel that they had those first couple years, both sides of the ball, was not good enough. I mean, that's what's part of what made it so impressive and why Daboll won Coach of the Year. Luann says, Mara will give Daboll next year with Dart. Stop with the Daboll firing. Stop. I'm just telling you. You don't say things like he did today and get away with it around here. Betch says, I can't expect this team to beat any of these teams. I agree with that. E-Man wants them to make John Lynch of the Niners president of football operations. E-Man endorses John Harbaugh as well. Key Smart says, question, if things do go bad, do you see them blowing things up with trades? Also, do you think the next regime will have to inherit Dart? The trade thing, I think that would depend, Key Smart, on, are there certain players that behind the scenes say they don't want to play here anymore if it comes to that? That would also, I think, depend on the general manager staying or not, because I don't think the general manager would dump the players he's invested in and the players that he's telling everybody are really good But I think if the general manager and the coach both went and you brought in somebody new, there would be more of a likelihood of that to happen. Luann says, let's let Daboll and Dart be together next season. Joe says, Pat, are all your bets listed on my bookie so people can just use your picks to bet on? Joe, great question. On Instagram, every Saturday, I put my Pat's picks on Instagram. And they should be on Twitter too. Check my Twitter account, P Leonard, or my Instagram, PL on NFL. Try to put them on YouTube Shorts sometimes too, but it's basically, 3 key picks against the spread plus a fantasy sleeper. And then I give you all my picks against the spread too, so you can tail them all if you want. So that's the best place to be, is my Instagram account. Typically on a Saturday, you get all of my picks right there. Ronnie Barnes has been criticized by fans, not just Daboll. Another example of Mara nepotism, says AJ. Let's see. Yes, Luann just likes Caps. She's not screaming at us. She just loves Caps, and she's enthusiastic, and she's positive. Love it. So, yeah, Mav, I see you. I hear you. You say Daboll isn't losing his job after Dart's first start. GCN says, Pat, you were right about Wilson would be benched in the last live stream. That's correct. Luann, see, we can't think this way, though. You said I predicted Giants 3-0, and they should be. Should be is not a thing in the NFL. It's not. You could be like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-0, and they've won their games by a combined total of 6 points. Beat the Falcons 23-20, the Texans 20-19, and the Jets 29-27. But guess what? It doesn't matter that the Texans almost beat the Bucs. Doesn't matter that the Jets almost beat the Bucs. Doesn't matter that the Falcons almost beat the Bucs. They all lost to them. And the Bucs don't have to sit there and apologize for winning games by 1, 2, and 3 points. They're 3-0. It's just how the NFL is. Oftentimes that's what the games are. They're decided in the margins and they're close. E-Man was just 1 week late on the Dart decision. He thought it was going to be week 5, New Orleans. A lot of people did, E-Man, which made sense. Pat, Giants offense is rated 32nd, defense 25th, so no improvement at all. Giants offense rated 31 since 2023. John says the real problem is the GM. Even if they fired Daboll, he's made too many bad decisions, but he's in with the Mara family. Agree. This team was not constructed correctly. Agree. Let's see. Pat, coaches want the Carolina job. What if the Giants get a phone call from Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson? Yeah, I think that feels like a no at this point. Let's see. Dart seems ahead of Daniel Jones in terms of vision as a rookie. Not unless he has an injury, it's hard to see him failing. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot to like about Jackson. By the way, when you mention the player and Dart and what it's going to look like, I meant to, by the way, just a reminder, we're brought to you by MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Sal Loretta for Men. You can support our sponsors by going to their websites and using the codes below to get special offers or discounts. And please support our sponsors. But I wrote a story for the New York Daily News today on Malik Nabers and on his usage against the Chiefs and on why he wasn't open, why they didn't get him the ball enough, what did it look like when I went back and watched the film. And what I found was it was a combination. There was too much reactive coaching, like letting the defense dictate what they were going to run or adjust to. Poor quarterback play from Russell Wilson really showed up big time watching the film. The Chiefs' defensive scheme deserved credit. And then Nabers' own route running contributed to a day that was ultimately disappointing. I mean, I went through the plays. Nabers was Russell Wilson's first read only one time in the Giants' first 6 passing plays and only 3 times in their first 10 dropbacks. So that's not acceptable, right? Now, he faced deep safeties on 27 of his 32 routes run. So there was almost always a second defender over top of him. But still, even though that was the case, they still forced 11 routes, 9 go routes and 2 post routes straight down the field. And the result of those 11 routes was 0 catches on 5 targets plus an interception. Now, the more disappointing thing, though, even than that, was when they recognized, okay, maybe we can't force it there. Their solution was to have him run like kind of short, quick hitch routes. But oftentimes he was either into a part of the teeth of the zone and not far enough out in any kind of space. Also with his back to the, or he's turned facing the football. So there are plays where he's pretty close to a defender. Even if the ball's thrown to him, he's not going to gain any yards. He's going to get tackled right at the spot. Just not a lot of creativity there. But then even more frustrating, he actually was getting open when he ran a few like deep stop routes or deep ins. So the Chiefs would drop way back after what they saw against Dallas, and they were dropping way back. And if Wilson was just able to hang in the pocket, there were at least 2 times where Nabers was open, 15 or so yards down the field at the second level of the defense. And one time Wilson bailed out of a clean pocket and forced the ball outside to Wan'Dale Robinson. I think it was an incompletion. And then another time, he was the interception he threw intended for Wan'Dale deep, where Nabers came back on the left side of the field. And if Russ had just thrown the ball, Nabers could have come back to the ball and gotten it. But he looked him off and threw deep into basically triple coverage in the zone for Robinson to get the ball. I would also say on Nabers there's other details in the story you should go check out, nydailynews.com. But one of the other things that stood out to me is when Nabers isn't the first option on a play and he seemingly knows he's either not going to get the ball or has a good chance not to get the ball, he does not run his routes with enough enthusiasm. And it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly watching the play that he's not going to get the ball. Does that make sense? So he needs to contribute and do a little bit more and commit there as well. Although, like I said, the primary reason for him not being factored in more into the game plan was not him. Searing, what's going on? Searing says, could you please repeat what Daboll said today? Exactly what was controversial? Yeah, sure, Searing. Thanks for being here and thanks for the super chat. So what he did today, I'll read my iPhone is talking to me right now. Siri's talking to me. What's going on here? I shouldn't say her name or she'll keep talking to me. All right. So let me get up the exact quote so I can read it to you word for word. Don't want to misrepresent it or confuse you. So he was asked why the team was practicing outside in like the slippery, rainy day, because he almost always has the team indoors during a day like this. So they have an indoor practice facility with turf, and then they have 3 fields outside that are uncovered and grass. And he was asked that, and he said, it's good for the guys' legs. Instead of going in on turf, we'd rather be out here. I wish it wasn't slippery, but which was noteworthy of him to say that. So I wish it wasn't slippery. Okay. So like, yeah, we know he usually doesn't want this, but they're doing it anyway. And then he points out, like, I wish it wasn't slippery. Then he says, but we'd rather go in here than go in there. And then as a reporter started asking a follow-up question or interjecting, he said, we'd rather go in here than there. And then he goes, and so would and he goes, medical people. And referring to the medical people in that way, putting the decision on them, saying like it was their call, not mine, looping them in, putting them out there publicly like that. I'm telling you, and the Giants aren't the only organization where the medical staff it's like bringing them up and making them as part of the story is a no-no, but that's a no-no in the Giants organization. Like to call out, let's say, Ronnie Barnes and the medical department for maybe a decision that the coach doesn't agree with or that's going to cost them. And to me, Searing, based on how long I've been here and covering this team and seeing, coaches fired and people lose their jobs and who they've crossed and how it cost them, and how people side and create divisions in the building and who's friends with whom and who's in whose ear. I know that that is definitely an extension of his attitude at the podium on Wednesday, which was, this is my call, not anyone else's. It was the allusion to leaks coming out of the building, but not from him, when he said, I only have had conversations with the players in regards to that. So, Searing is very much a head coach who understands he has his back against the wall and feels like, not just feels like, understands he's lost or is losing allies. And now he is just standing up for himself differently than he has in the past. And that's again, just like putting Dart in, a risky move. Joey B says, we have the talent on this roster to win. Interesting. We needed better schemes and coaching. Everyone's got to go. No more first-time GMs and coaches. We need proven winners and leaders. I agree with that. Proven winners and leaders. Pat, in our opinions, watching all films, Giants have top young talents, except they've got horrible coaches, bad playbooks. Players won't be developed properly. I don't think all of the young talent you guys are referring to is like, solutions to certain positions, but their shortcomings on the field frequently show up in the form of, sometimes it's players not making the play, but you also see shortcomings in the scheme, in the coaching, in putting guys in the best position to succeed. And we did see that, like I just started outlining, on offense against the Chiefs. Mav, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I get what you're saying now. I'm not a big Daboll fan. I'm just not up for another coaching overhaul. Do you think Kafka could be the answer? I don't want to see Dart get the DJ treatment. Mav, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I hear you. And really, you're kind of articulating what John Mara articulated last year in January, which was, if I could, I'm just paraphrasing what his attitude was, but generally what John Mara was saying was, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that 3 wins deserves to keep people's jobs, or that there's any reason based on the record to believe what I'm saying. But I'm telling you, I have a belief in this process. I have belief in the general manager. I have belief in what we're doing. And I want to be more patient than I've been with these other staffs. And so that's what his gamble was. That's what his belief was. And it really was, like you said, out of fatigue about what it means to fire a coach and have to go through the hiring process again. And he alluded to how, in Mara's mind, firing people and ripping it all up and starting over sets you back even further. I understand what his point is there. I think it's debatable that it sets you back. Well, like, I would debate that it sets you back more to stick with a regime or a coach or a setup that clearly doesn't work, right? Like, they've lost 17 of their last 20 games. In my opinion, that is evidence that this is not working. So rather than hope for that to change, the evidence tells you that even though you don't want to start over, that resetting it is going to, hopefully, as Joey B pointed out, get you better leaders, get you better people in here, find a way to assemble a roster that has more leadership on it, better players across the board, things like that. Do I think Kafka could be the answer? I do think, based on Daboll's behavior and this kind of panic move here to the quarterback like this, and to the young quarterback, and the conflicting reports about whether the team is ready to put him in or not, I think that firing Daboll and going to Kafka at a certain juncture here might be a way to keep the team alive, keep them fighting, give them a little bit more hope, and then give Kafka a way to step forward and show us what he can do. I would be interested to see that if this season continues to go off the rails. I agree with you about not wanting to see Dart get the Daniel Jones treatment and constantly having new schemes, new offenses, right? Has to learn new, and it's always starting over. So I hear what you're saying about, hey, can Kafka show us enough that he could stay, be the head coach, and then Dart has some consistency to what he's learning and what he's running and what he's operating? Yeah, I think that it would only be fair if they did that with Kafka and with Daboll, right? If they fired Daboll and Kafka replaced him, it's only fair to evaluate Mike from the lens that you're evaluating him from. you know? And I think that would all be factored in. How does Dart look? Does he look like a promising prospect who's growing and building and needs that consistency? Does it fall so flat that now the GM is getting fired too, and now you have a high enough pick that you're drafting a new QB, right? Like, knock on wood, we don't see that, right? And I have more belief in Jackson than that to happen. But, those are just different doors that are available to you that as possibilities now that you've made this change. But I think it would be only fair to give Mike a chance there. I will say this, like, Kafka got good reviews when he coached down at the, the Shrine Bowl. And he's obviously Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, but he got good reviews doing that stuff from people who worked with him. And he's pretty freaking bland at the podium, but he's not like that when he's coaching the team and on the field. Tuto checks in with another super chat. Mav, thanks again, and welcome to Talkin Ball. Tuto says, Pat, speaking of personal experiences, it's all about coaching. We currently have less than perfect rosters, but we've the best coaches against all odds. Currently, we're 4-1 and beating top clubs in Europe, mate. And Tuto, hopefully you're staying healthy as well, because that is a physical sport. Thank you for paying in as always. Let's see. Let's stick in the queue. What do we got? Thank you so much for supporting this chat, guys. You're awesome. All right. I slid down pretty far here, just trying to find my place. Remember, this is Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. We are live Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. or at the very latest, halftime of the Monday or Thursday night game. And then we also go live post-game after every Giants home and away game from the stadium, coming out of the locker room, talking to Daboll, talking to the players, doing our reporting around the league to break down the Giants and the NFL. It's league talk. It's Giants talk. It's everything that you want from somebody who covers this team and has been covering this team and this league as a columnist and a beat writer for 10 years now. 10 years. Wow. That's where this gray hair comes from. All right. I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm trying to pick off some highlight comments in here to make sure as many of you who haven't been heard from yet do get heard from. But going to wrap it up relatively soon, just to give my voice a break. By the way, how disappointing are the Cardinals right now? Down 17-6 against the Seahawks, about to go down probably 20-6. Let's see. How does their third round DT pick look, Pat? Darius Alexander, not good enough. I mean, I think his body needs a lot of work for sure. You can say that about different rookies. Certainly a guy you draft in the third round. I think they were hoping for somebody who would be, I know they were hoping for a guy who would be an immediate contributor and upgrade on the interior. That's not what he has been so far. Maybe he develops into more down the road, but he is older. And somebody who is more developed, right? More in the mold of like a John Michael Schmitz with, 6 years in college, that kind of thing. What do I make of Daboll meeting with Dart for 10 hours? What are you referring to there? The account referring to yourself as Pat Hanlon? 10 hours? Did somebody report that they met for 10 hours? I didn't see that. I mean, listen, when you're starting a rookie quarterback for his first NFL start and you're bringing him in to try to help save your job and your season and your head coaching career with the Giants, that's a normal thing, right? Let alone just putting in a game plan in general would be, burning the midnight oil, I would think. William says the leak obviously came from the GM or his cronies. Why do you think Shane didn't spend more capital on offensive linemen in the draft? Well, because he took 3 swings in that first draft and missed, then drafted. So you think about it, he did draft really across the board on the line, right? Since he's been here, he's drafted Evan Neal, tackle, Josh Azudu, who, guard/tackle, Marcus McKeithen, guard / tackle. John Michael Schmitz, center. Marcus Bowe, tackle, right? So he's drafted 5 linemen. Only one of them can play for him. I mean, tells you everything you need to know. Let's see. Joey B says he told Odell Beckham Jr. to get the contract signed while they were in the elevator at the game. Love it, Joe. Optimistic says, would they ever hire Brian Flores? I know he's in court against the NFL and the Giants. That doesn't look likely at this point, given what he's accusing them of. What happened to the live FaceTime with fans? Yeah, GCN, I need to organize that better. We brought Joey B on before. Definitely want to continue bringing like fans and content creators on, maybe one at a time, and have you guys pay in to come on at a certain level. Just want to make sure that it's that it's organized and that I can do it strategically and efficiently. So in other words, let's say I'm doing a live chat where if you pay $25, you can come on camera for 5 minutes with me, right? I would probably need a second person available to, when you pay that money, to get your contact information so they can send you the link so you could jump in on here live and join me. Because if I'm trying to do that all myself, I'll get distracted. Now I'm not doing the chat. I'm not providing the entertainment for people. So I just have to find a clean way to do that efficiently, but it's coming. We need a tough, no-nonsense, defensive head coach, says Mosley. Jay Snow doesn't think Shane or Daboll should come back. Way too many draft mistakes and missing on free agents. Joe says, Pat, you're the best because you are realistic about the team, not all eyewash like the team saying we have the best front 7 on defense in the NFL, that Wilson is great and a great leader. Francis says, I hope Kafka signs a kicker. Youngwei Koo in the house. Ridgewood Zone. They were hyping up Shane's draft class in 24. Now that class looks bad, says Jay Snow. Drew Phillips can't cover anyone this year. Newbin can't tackle, and Theo Johnson seems like he is overhyped. Let's see. Yes, Wilson, Shane's guy. Pat, have you heard anything about moves to fix the interior part of the line? Definitely still the weakest part of the team, whether Daboll is here or not. I know JMS has been limited with a neck this week. We'll see what that makes him like as far as game status goes. I'll check more into that later. Definitely, when he said they're evaluating everything, you would expect that there will be some other decisions. Shane Bowen did make reference to Cordell Flott needing to be ready to play more slot today. Let me find that exact quote. I know you asked me about the interior O-line, but let me find that quote because he just kind of threw it in there. He said, so somebody said, what have you seen from Drew Phillips? He's been targeted a lot. And he said, continue to work on fundamental technique. He was trying to be disruptive and disrupt some of those routes. He was a little too far off to do it. He got called on a couple of those. Those guys know how to play the game on that side too. That's why things get called, because you're not in a static position and you're trying to move your feet to stay on the body. Then he says, I think part of that too is to make sure we get Flott some work in there. At some point, he's going to have to go in there and play and do some things for us as well. That plays a role in it too. Continue to improve day in and day out. That's the biggest thing for all these guys, not just Drew. Let's get back to making sure we're on the fundamentals, the way we're able to make the plays when they're there. So that sounds to me like we might end up seeing Deonte Banks and Paulson Adebo on the outside and Cordell Flott back in the slot, like maybe to start this next game. We'll see. But he kind of mentioned Flott out of nowhere there. Fitted says, for someone who literally never wins, Daboll comes across like an a-hole in press conferences. Steven does not agree firing a head coach this early. Why bring him back then? The season most likely continues to spiral, and I have no faith in Kafka. It's a jet thing to do. Oh, I like that phrase. Steven, that's fair position for sure. Jay points out that Neal and Hyatt can't even see the field. GCN says Chris Sims said Nabers said the Chiefs play man and Wilson would throw him a lot of passes before the game. Yikes. Seems like they were not ready for what they saw. John says if Daboll somehow wins against the Chargers, would that make his job safe for the year, even with a bad record? That's a good question. I think, John, I definitely think that if he can make this look competent and Dart looks really good and you beat the Chargers here, it quiets a lot from the standpoint of, okay, the coach, put his neck on the line and now he's backing it up. So let's see where this goes. It makes it much easier for everybody to get on board with that, at least for a little while, right? Does it buy him the rest of the season? I don't think it guarantees that, but it definitely would. We saw it happen last year. I mean, he was on the verge of sliding to 0-4, 0-5, whatever it was, and maybe losing his job. He wins one game against the Browns, and really that quieted it. They also won another game 2 weeks later against the Seahawks. So even though they finished 3-14, making it a 2-3 start there instead of 1-4, 0-5, bought him the rest of a year, even though they only won one more game after that. So with a rookie quarterback in the mix, certainly that's a possibility. That's it. Hopefully Dart can survive the next few weeks for this horrible schedule, but only time will tell if he's the guy. If not, time for a new regime to take this team in a new directions. Does Daboll get fired by week 8? Yeah, I'm saying he could get fired as early as Monday, in my opinion. Tibbs looks good, says Cruzan. Bobby O has lost a step, says Jay Snow. By the way, I talked to Bobby about the fumble getting ripped out of his hands. I'd never heard this term before. He said that there are two different types of fumbles. There are country fumbles and city fumbles. And what that means is a city fumble is more like there's people everywhere, the ball's bouncing, there's bodies. You want to just dive on it, lay on it, and cover it because there's too many people around. You don't know where it's going to bounce, and you don't know who else is going to grab for it next. He said when that ball bounced out and was rolling, he thought it was a country fumble. In other words, open field, scoop and score, go get it and take it and go. And like that's the difference between deciding whether to pick it up or to fall on it. So he decided to pick it up and try to scoop and score, and then clearly just did not see Mahomes coming. And Mahomes made a good, smart play there. Obviously, you'd still like to be stronger on the ball to do that. I asked him if it's been eating him up. He said, no, you can't let that happen. It was still exciting to be in that position. Just wished he finished it. But, killer play there. Even though he was there to make the play, you just need to make it in the end. Is Thomas playing 3 quarters this week? GCN, I would expect him to play more. I don't know how much. I don't know if it's going to be full game. He has been limited this week in practice, so it still feels like he's still being slowly worked in. I could envision another rotation, maybe with a little bit more playing time on his part. Jay Snow thinks Burns is the best player on defense. G-Man ready to clean house. I think they sign Illuminor? Not sure. A lot of people want Daboll gone, says Giants. People wanted McAdoo, Shermer, Judge gone as well. What did that solve? What makes you think another GM and coach changes everything? I have no confidence it will. That's a fair point, Giants. I mean, you have enough evidence now, like you said, that it's not just the coaches and GMs. It's also the ownership and the organization around them and above them. So that's a fair point for sure. E-Man says Daniel Jones won 4 games his rookie year. Dart needs to win 5 to prove he's better. His coach had 4 years to build a team for him. Let's see. What do I think about Minter as head coach and Wink for DC with Kafka returning? Hey, if Wink returned here, I'll tell you what. Abdul Carter has been pretty good, despite only having a half sack. But you want to make him fit. You want to see him finish and make more of an impact. And Yeah, you want to see him finish and make more of an impact. And I promise you, if Wink Martindale was the DC, he would be scheming him all over the place to get to like win one-on-ones and to terrorize quarterbacks. Like he would have 4.5 sacks right now instead of a half, I think. Joe says Seattle looks really good without Wilson now. Cardinals look like a bad team. Momo says, keep giving us the facts, Pat. Don't let this crybaby fan base who only want to hear sunshine and rainbows BS stop you from the great job you're doing. Momo, I really appreciate that. Seriously. I say this all the time, but I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not just saying it, not playing to the crowd. Like those comments keep me going because there is a lot of hate, a lot of noise, a lot of people in my comments. There's a lot of nastiness, a lot of people who try to make it personal. And I'm just trying to tell you what I see and hear, and I feel like I know. CJ says, if this happens, it only proves how over entrenched the Giants brass is. Hanlon, Maras, McDonald's, etc. GCN says Mike Florio still cannot believe the Giants signed Russell Wilson since all the connections between the Giants and the Steelers. Steelers said they would sign Fields or Wilson. Fields signed with the Jets. James says, yes, the truth must be told about this team, Pat. Don't sugarcoat it. Just tell us the truth and nothing but the truth. Jim says, our record over the past 10 years, Pat, is the same as the Cleveland Browns. Do the fans like Steven not understand how bad this team and organization are? They live in Disneyland. They need to draft more offensive linemen. I agree. Socrates says, I think he was gone the minute he said he had another issue. I don't know what that means. Sublight said, instead of an endless parade of coach and staff changes, will John Mara ever look inward, look at the front office and how it functions? Can't be optimistic about that at the moment. Yes, ma'am says, what's up with the Giants tickets? Was looking for Sunday. Any decent seats are like 300 and up. Yes, man. I think with Jackson Dart's first start and with them playing an undefeated Chargers team like this, I think that's enough for them to be able to get that kind of money. I would check as it gets closer to game time to kickoff, like on, Saturday, go back and look, even like early Sunday morning, if you're close enough to the stadium and you can afford to wait that long, because especially with the planes flying overhead and, maybe there are enough Giants fans or people who aren't feeling the love and having faith, and then you could get something on discount on the secondary market late, possibly. But yeah, Jackson Dart's first start, Chargers 3-0, Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, and week 4, where even if it does feels like the season is over, people still want to get their money's worth and be entertained. So hard for the prices to drop that quickly. Chris Sims says nobody will trade for Wilson. Pat says if Joe stays, who would want to work with him? He's basically on the hot seat. Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, Lou Anarumo is a guy who, New York guy, coached here, knows Shane from Miami. He's helping the Colts right now, undefeated 3-0, coaching their defensive coordinator, was with the Bengals prior to that. That would be a name. That's a name I've thrown out there before. That would be one name in the ring, I think. But I agree with your premise, Pat, which is that, working with Shane is not based on how he has handled things and how cozy he is to ownership versus what the coach is able to be and do. It's not a desirable situation. Let's see. Love the way Pat kept pressing the questions on Daboll about the plan, pushing for answers. Daboll definitely hates it. He deserves worse, honestly, because Pat always keeps it professional and respectful. Thanks for that, H-Town. Guys, if I didn't get to a question and you really want it answered, pop a super chatted and ask it now. I'll try to spend 5 more minutes or so, and then we're going to jump off here. We're pushing 2 hours, and definitely need to get some rest for another promising Friday. Who knows what Brian Daboll is going to bring to the podium tomorrow after what we've seen the last 2 days. 4 minutes left in this game. Seahawks 20, Cardinals 13. Looked like Harrison Jr. made a nice catch for the Cardinals, and then Jackson Smith-Njigba comes back with a big catch for the Seahawks. And now the Cardinals look like they just got to stop and might have a chance to get the ball back to try to tie. All right, let me see if there's anybody else in the queue, if anybody has any more super chats. Let's see. Gonna pass on doing a Hooks Giants trivia tonight, but we will come back Sunday post game. This is what everybody needs to know. Sunday post game from MetLife Stadium. I will be live here on YouTube from MetLife Stadium, from the press box, staring at the field after the Giants play the Chargers, and I will have spoken to Jackson Dart, Brian Daboll, Malik Nabers, Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, all of these guys in the locker room to get my finger on the pulse of what happened and why, how are the players feeling, what's coming next, what are our takeaways, where does Brian Daboll stand, how does he react to the result, does Dart flourish, does he struggle, does the team let go of the rope, do they rise to the challenge? They know how desperate and dire it is. They know where this stands. They know that it's all about getting a result, and Brian Daboll knows it's all on him. If you missed our episode, you can go back, rewatch, check it out. I lay out in detail why this has quickly ramped up from Brian Daboll just making a quarterback change to Brian Daboll putting himself right in line to be fired, perhaps as early as Monday, not only due to saying that the Dart decision, benching Wilson for Dart, was just his decision, but also implying there's leaks coming out of the building from other places. Obviously, we know where he's alluding to, if that's the case, general manager / ownership, and also calling out the medical people when asked why they were practicing outside. That's a no-no. Everybody knows it. You cross the medical people in Ronnie Barnes' department in the Giants. Not an easy way to keep your job doing that. But Brian Daboll acting like his own separate entity, putting all his faith in himself, putting all his faith in Jackson Dart, his guy, the quarterback that he played such a huge role in selecting, and he's rolling with him. And it'll be fascinating to see whether Daboll can back it up, Dart can back up Daboll, and off we go. Or if this hits the skids, the team goes in the tank, and Daboll ends up, due to what is happening on and off the field, losing his job before we know it. Francis says, thanks for the reporting in tonight's live chat. Fascinating. The front office suddenly has a sense of urgency. Interesting point, Francis. Interesting. This has been Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. Guys, go catch the end of this exciting game with the Cardinals looking to play catch up here. They're about to face a 4th down as they charge, trying to tie the game against the Seattle Seahawks at home. Remember, join us post-game live Sunday from MetLife Stadium. Should be around 5:30 p.m. or so, and we will break down everything we saw, take all your questions, and we look forward to hopefully an entertaining Sunday. Jackson Dart's first start incoming. Brian Daboll on the hot seat. This has been Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast live here on Thursday, September 25th. My bookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Salaretta are our sponsors. Go use those codes. Go to the links in my profile on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't already to the channel, and hit those like buttons one more time on your way out. I'm a fan says another great chat, Pat. Another great chat. See you later, guys. And I should actually also I forgot. Have to thank the super chatters. Always have to give an extra thank to the super chatters. Joey B, Vinny Scam, Jake Asman, DGH, Formula, NFL, Cruzan, Ja, NFL, Tuto, Searing, Joey, Tuto again, Mav, Tuto a 3rd time, So appreciative of you guys. So appreciative of all of you for supporting us with the super chat, supporting us with your questions and your passion. Please go support our sponsors, and we'll see you Sunday. Take care.